Hello, it's Jean and Whip, and it is time for Tip Demo Wednesday. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me. And I have an exciting announcement to make tonight concerning a little change over the next 3 to 4 weeks for my Tip Demo Wednesday. And you may be wondering where Stitches is. Well, because these two little puppies are a handful and still in training, she is in the house this evening instead of in the stitching cottage. But she'll make an appearance for you very soon. And let me put Whip down real quick. There you go, and we'll hope that he stays out of mischief while I share with you our tip demo for this evening. And what is my exciting announcement? Well, I am going to go live over the next 3 to 4 weeks with my Tip Demo Wednesday, as it is going to be a series. And the series is going to be called, let me make sure I get this right, Tip Demo Wednesday, Hand Quilting Step by Step with Jean and Donnell. You'll be able to come join and learn along as I teach Donnell how to hand quilt. So that will be broken down into at least a 3-week, had to check on Whip down there. But that will be broken down into at least a 3-week series of the steps of teaching Donnell, my dear friend from Donnell Stitchery, how to hand quilt. She has a quilt that she is wanting to hand quilt. She will be her first time hand quilting, and she contacted me about wondering if I would help teach her to hand quilt. So a little brainstorming, and I came up with the idea to let's go ahead and do that live via Zoom instead of just doing a recorded Tip Demo Wednesday on Wednesdays. So that is what we will be doing over the next 3 to 4 weeks. I say 3 to 4 weeks because I have it broken down to where I'm pretty sure the steps will be broken into 3 segments. However, based on how things go in those segments, we may have to add a 4th week. We will wait and see. But I know it will be at least a 3-week series. So look forward to that on Wednesdays, live at 7 o'clock. So let me give you some information on those of you that may want to join along and also learn to hand quilt or get some more tips on hand quilting, what it is that the basic supplies that you will need. First of all, of course, you are going to need a quilting hoop. And by quilting hoop, I mean a hand quilting hoop, not an embroidery hoop, which a lot of beginners make the mistake and try quilting with an embroidery hoop. They are not the same, and you will not be happy trying to use an embroidery hoop instead of a hoop that is made for hand quilting. The main difference between an embroidery hoop and a hand quilting hoop is the thickness and depth of that hoop. Also, some of your embroidery hoops and counted cross stitch ones will have a non-slip edge on them, which does not work for hand quilting. You want your fabric to be able to move in that hoop for hand quilting. That's the major difference. And I'm going to show you some examples of the hand quilting hoops, which those of you that know me know that I do use this custom made lap hoop, which the hoop is just a normal hoop. However, it is, if I raise this up and turn it around for you to see, it is connected to a frame that sits on my lap, and it will, if I can get my hand working, it will swivel up and down for the angle that you need, and that way you are not having to hold your hoop as you quilt. This hoop is a 14-inch hoop, which bigger is not always better when it comes to hand quilting. However, you do want one large enough to fit a good size area in your hoop at one time. So I'm going to set that one aside. This is custom made. It is not available. I cannot give you a link to get it because the friend of mine's husband made it, and he is no longer living, so it is not available anymore. Sorry about that. There are hand quilting lap hoops that you can get at other resources. You just have to check those out. And then the other, which this shows a good example, see the thickness of that compared to an embroidery hoop. The thickness of this part up here, it needs to be much sturdier for hand quilting than an embroidery hoop. But this is a 16-inch hoop, and then I also have an 18-inch hoop. I have to admit, very rarely do I ever use this 18-inch hoop. It is too big. It's difficult to hold that big of hoop. And the way that you want to find a quilting hoop that is comfortable for you is the area that you are going to be working with is from the bend of your arm to the tip of your finger. Anything bigger than that and you're not going to be able to reach in that hoop no matter which way you turn it. So you don't really need a hoop that is bigger than that area. For most people, that is going to be a 14 or a 16-inch hoop. So, and this is a 16-inch hoop, and if I can hold this, you can see what I'm talking about. Your arm will be under here. So if it is larger than you can reach, that space of that hoop, if you have a larger one, is wasted and you won't be able to reach it anyway. So that is how you want to measure for your hoop size. And like I said, most people will average a 14-inch or a 16-inch. For some smaller projects, there's nothing wrong with going down to a 12-inch. So you would normally look for hoops that are anywhere in size from 12 to 16. And like I said, very rarely would you ever need an 18-inch hoop. So that is the very first basic thing that you are going to need. And they can be found on certain websites, of course. Google it, and you can also find them on Amazon. The hoops that I like and that I find are sturdy and the best are the J.P. Edmonds. And I will put a link for that in the description box also. And those are good sturdy hoops. They do have a cheaper line and a more expensive line. The ones that are the $30 to $40 and up are the good ones. I do not get the ones that are around the 12, 15, 16, that price range. They are not as good. So when you're looking for a hoop, those are things to keep in mind. Then you are also going to need, of course, something to quilt on. Not the hoop. What I mean is we are not going to, in this segment, be quilting a actual quilt, because that would be way more involved than, sitting trying to teach step-by-step hand quilting in a series. What we will be doing is we will be using, if you have muslin, that is great, plain white or off-white fabric. Doesn't have to be real great quality. It can be a good muslin type fabric for this, because this is just going to be learning and practicing on. And whatever size hoop you decide to go with, which I will be using a 14-inch size hoop, you will want your fabric squares, a front and a back, and a batting. So you will want 2 fabric squares and 1 batting square that are at least 6 inches wider than your hoop. So for a 14-inch hoop, for a 14-inch hoop, you are going to want your squares to be 22 inches. So you will cut 2 out of your fabric that you are using, and I am just using kind of a white fabric here for both my top and my bottom of my sandwich. And then you are going to want a good hand quilting thickness type batting. You are not going to want to use warm and natural for hand quilting. Some people will use it. It's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be harder on your hand. It is just a little too thick for hand quilting. So, what is she chewing on? He chewing on down there. Sorry. So, you're going to want a thinner a thinner batting, one that's really soft and thin and pliable. It is much easier to needle through than something that is thick. I'm not sure, because this is a leftover piece of batting from some other project in mine that wasn't labeled with what it is. I normally label what they are, but this one wasn't. So, but it is a very soft and thin one. But what I normally use, and my favorite batting for hand quilting, is Quilter's Dream Cotton in the Request thickness is what I use normally for hand quilting. There are other good ones out there. I'm trying to think offhand what I used to use. Hobbs Heirloom 80/20 is a good one, or their all cotton one is a very good one. There are some of the Pellin ones that are good. Just look for one that's not too thick. And if you have any questions on that, put it in the comments. I will answer if I am able and help you out with that. And then, of course, you are going to need marking tools to mark the design that you will be quilting on your quilt. Somebody is getting into things somewhere and bringing them over on the floor to me. Sorry about that. But the 3 tools for marking that I use most often is, this is my favorite white chalk pencil. It is General's. That is what I use. If the fabric is a darker fabric, that it will show up. That's the one I always try to use. However, of course, that's not going to show up on white, and I do not use colored chalk at all because it is a nightmare to try and get out. So the other most common one that I use is the Bone chalk lead type marking pencil. It is my favorite. It is a retractable pencil type, has a very soft lead in it that is easy to remove. Will wash out. A lot of times it wears off with the little rubber tip that you use on the finger. Excuse me one moment. As he ran away from me. Anyway, sorry about that, but he was getting into something that had to make sure it wasn't going to hurt him. Can't be letting Whip get hurt. And then the third is the Disappearing Ink, water soluble, air and water soluble marking pen. Those are the only 3 that I use in marking my quilting designs on whatever I am going to be quilting. So you will need those. And then, of course, you are going to need either some quilting stencils or, however you are going to mark. Just choose whatever you may have. I thought this was a cute one that I will be using just for grins and giggles on mine. But it is a little border one with some sewing themed things on it, or you could use something similar to hearts. You're going to want something that has some curves in it so you can learn how to do curves as well as straight line quilting. And this is also a very nice one. But just whatever stencils or whatever you may have on hand. If you don't have any, you can find those through the stencil company. And I have not checked on Amazon, but and there are some of the quilt shops that do carry stencils. So if you have a local quilt shop in your area, check them out and see if they have any stencils available. If you are near any Amish quilt shops, they will almost always have stencils that they carry. So, and you will also need a straight ruler for some straight line marking. For that is what we will also be doing, and we will be sectioning off our 22-inch or whatever size your square is into 4 segments, to where we'll be doing a different type of quilting in each one of those segments for you to learn how to do that. And you are going to, of course, need quilting needles. And my favorite hand quilting needles, which hand quilting needles are called betweens. They are not sharps, they are not embroidery needles, they are not crewel needles, they are not applique needles. Hand quilting needles are betweens. And my favorite is this S. Thomas and Sons. The resource that I get those through is Colonial Needle Company, I believe is what it's called, but I have left that in the description box before, and I will leave that in there again. If you can't find those, my other favorite is of the Bone, and those are available on Amazon. And the size that you will most likely want is anywhere from a 9 to an 11. 9 is a longer needle, 11 is a shorter needle. And this Bone is one that also has a bigger eye on it, easier to thread. But I used to always quilt with a size 12. Somebody's been in the trash can. In a size 12 needle, which is the smallest that you can get, because the smaller, I am so sorry. I should have put him in the cage, I guess, but then he might have made too much noise. But size 12 is a very small needle. The smaller the needle, the better smaller stitch you will be able to make. The longer the needle, you can't rock it as much, and you won't get as small of a quilting stitch is what makes the difference on that. But starting out, because of getting used to holding that needle, you may need a 9. A 10 is a very good one to start out with. So you are going to need your quilting needles. You are going to, of course, need a pair of small scissors. You are going to need a thimble, and you will want to find whatever thimble is comfortable for you, and whatever thimble is the cost that you want to invest in. When I first started quilting, I used many different thimbles, but as I got to where I knew that I was loving hand quilting and doing a lot of hand quilting, I did invest in a good thimble, which mine is one of the Roxanne thimbles. It is an expensive thimble. I have 3 of them, only because I do have 2 different sizes, because your finger is a different size in the morning and a different size in the evening, and a different size depending upon the temperature and the humidity. So it can change throughout the day. So you might want to see that you have a couple different sizes, or one that's adjustable is always a good one to start with when you are starting out. And other thing that you will find is useful is they make these little gripper tips for your index finger, which helps you pull that needle through. And that is what I was referring to, that you will find that with this pencil type one, a lot of times as you are quilting, this will rub the fabric as you pull that needle, and it will erase definitely the chalk, and many times a lot of the pencil that you have marked, because I do not mark mine heavily. You want to mark it lightly so it is easy to remove those marks after you have finished quilting. You are going to need a needle threader, which this is an example of one needle threader. It's got the wire end on it. They all have the wire. And then there is this one that has a light on it to help. But you are probably going to want a needle threader to help you thread those tiny holes on that needle. And you are going to want hand quilting thread. Hand quilting thread is a thicker thread. It is a waxed thread. It is not the same as thread that you use in your sewing machine or for other hand stitching. It is made for quilting. And my favorite hand quilting thread is Gutermann, which I have a large assortment of Gutermann. I always get my hand quilting thread when it is on sale someplace. That's the best time to stock up and get it. But you do not have to use, an expensive hand quilting thread. I have been using a lot of lately when I need other colors that I don't have. Coats & Clark has come out with a newer, it's not like the old Quilts and Clark thread, but they have a very good quality hand quilting thread. And you can find that at your local Walmart. So just make sure that you're getting the part that says hand quilting, though, and not regular thread. But that is also a good thread. YLI is another good one, but those are some of the hand quilting threads that I use. And you will need, normally you use a color that blends with your fabric, and you can go along and do that. I, of course, because you're going to have to see my stitches, you don't want, normally you want them to blend in and not be, you know, not be standing out. It's just a design element to the quilt to hold all the layers together, depending on, you know, what you are doing with your quilt. Normally, it is a color that blends in and you do not notice except for the depth and the design that the hand quilting makes. But so that you will be able to see my stitching as I show it, I will be using a colored contrasting thread, so you will be able to see the stitching on that. So that, I believe, is everything that you are going to need. I don't think I mentioned that you are going to need the 1-inch curved safety pins that are used for basting, the method that we will be using for basting your layers together. And it has a little curve in it, makes it come up and pop through the quilt easier. And you want the small 1-inch ones because that is less movement of your layers of fabric than if you use a larger one. Use those larger ones, your fabric can move all the way along on that pin, and you do not want that. So, and if you are someone that needs a little extra light and doesn't have a good light wherever you may be sitting doing your work, you might want to get some type of one of the lights that go around your neck, one of the ones that go on your head, or that type of thing, because you will need good lighting when you are hand quilting. So that covers everything that you are going to need supply-wise to be able to begin and start doing the series of learning step-by-step hand quilting. And one of the things that I did want to show, if you can get your hands on, they are getting harder and harder to find, but there are still whole cloth quilts out there, and there are some that are smaller, which I just happen to have this one. And this kind of shows what, you know, your sandwich will look like after it is basted together. But this is a whole cloth quilt. You can see where I have started some of the stitching there. But it is pre-marked, and you follow that. That is one of the washout markers. You want to make sure that you do not use an iron or anything on this, because it will, sorry about that, will permanently set that ink, and you don't want that. So do not get this near any heat or use an iron on it. That will permanently set it. When you are done quilting, that will wash out. But if you can find or have one of these laying around, this is perfect to use to learn to hand quilt on. And I just wanted to share that with you. And you may want to get, of course, a smaller container than this, but a small little container or an eyeglass case, one of the bigger ones like this, makes a nice little kit to put everything in that you will need. Of course, I did, you know, add some stuff to this one inside to make that so it could be a little kit to hold all my supplies in. So I hope there are some of you that will be inspired to come along and join us as I start the series over the next 3 to 4 weeks for our Tip Demo Wednesday, Hand Quilting Step by Step with Jean and Donnell, where you can come along and learn along as I teach Donnell how to hand quilt. So look for that upcoming next week, Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week And I will see you soon. And remember, in the meantime, I can keep you in stitches. Bye-bye.